Hello, dear friends. The decadence of the British Empire affects us all because they have been the masters of the world for centuries, and above all, the masters of money. Opinion piece. Admiralty Crisis. Everything dissolves. Nothing is stable anymore. Perversion of language. The Maritime Law affects us. Everything is transfiguring. A person is not property. The old is giving way to the new. Every state has become a private company. The birth certificate is traded on the stock exchange. What is not the highest truth will be exposed. Why do they write our name in capital letters? Banknotes are bills of exchange without gold backing. The Llibre del Consolat de Mar of Barcelona is the origin. It comes from Phoenician, Egyptian and Greek trade customs. Vacant title of Grand Admiral since the death of Philip of Edinburgh. Let's start. According to Jude Bington, the official announcement of the symbolic collapse of London Bridge, in quotes, frees the world from the dominance of British Admiralty. Although I think this view would be too far-fetched, it may well begin to call into question the basis of the Maritime Act or Maritime Law, which considers citizens lost at sea for legal purposes. The Admiralty, originally known as the Office of Admiralty and Maritime Affairs, was formerly the government department responsible for the British Royal Navy. It was dissolved in 1964 and became a Navy department of the Ministry of Defence. Originally held by a single individual, the title of Lord Grand Admiral was from the 18th century onwards seconded and exercised by an Admiralty Council. The title of Lord Grand Admiral of the United Kingdom was held by the British monarchy from 1964 to 2011 and was presented by Queen Elizabeth II to her husband, Prince Philip of Edinburgh, for his 90th birthday. The Duke carried the title until his death on 9th April 2021, and that title is now vacant. Symbolism. The bridge of the ship has fallen. As friend DNA Jose Manuel says, this could refer to the command post on a ship. Let's remember that it is a maritime state with maritime laws and with privateers, buccaneers and colonizers. Captain on the bridge. How many times have we had this phrase in the movies? London Bridge is falling down. It's a British nursery rhyme and curse game. The song dates from 1744 and tells the story of the fall of London Bridge and how it had to be rebuilt. It is believed that the destruction of the bridge was due to an attack by the Vikings led by Ottar Svarti, although recent research indicates that the fall of London Bridge took place in the 17th century. The game consists of two players holding their arms and forming an arc, through which the other players have to pass. While everyone sings the song in unison, when the song ends, the two people who had their arms raised lowered them, catching the one who was passing. The chorus is very famous. London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. In the new Netflix series Vikings Valhalla, The origin of London Bridge has fallen is addressed as the plot will tell the story of how in the early 11th century there was an attack by the Danes on England ruled by King Ethelred II, which included the fall of London Bridge, a wooden structure across the River Thames inherited from Roman times. This is the origin of the phrase that gave rise to the Queen's mourning process. Private interests. The problem arises when a state becomes a corporation of private interests rather than an impartial trustee or administrator of public interests. The problem with the legal system is that the state acts as an omnipresent putative father, subtly and subtly taking away people's fundamental rights, and that people unconsciously accept this because they think that beyond the state there is only a legal and social wasteland. In other words, the people believe that the state is everything, in quotes, but freedom requires responsibility and risk. Admiralty Law or Maritime Law is a body of law that governs nautical matters and private maritime disputes. Admiralty law consists of both domestic law on maritime activities and private international law governing relations between private parties. In the case of common law countries, the common law is a mixture of legal decisions of the judge, case law from previous cases, natural law, case law, and simple, fair and evidence-based court procedures, and commercial contract law. Such law usually applies to crimes against physical integrity and property, where there is a victim or an affected person. Perversion of language. Behind the political, economic and social system, there are a few hierarchical and hidden groups running the economy and politics from anonymity, and twisting words and language into state legal norms in order to impose more and more regulations that affect our fundamental rights for the good of all, in quotes, but which serve private interests because of our ignorance of the legal grammatical system, which no one can understand because it is a deliberately confusing and contradictory gibberish subject to the interpretation of a judge and the rhetoric of a lawyer. Because of this process, a living human being becomes a corporation and is subject to maritime law or admiralty law, an international body of law with a public but private purpose, which acts in a commercial manner with the other states that become corporations or legal fictions that control and manage countries, and which has its origins in the commercial usages of different Mediterranean villages such as the Phoenicians, Egyptians, and Greeks. The origin of such law was first compiled in the Middle Ages in the Llibre del Consolat de Mar of Barcelona, which is still the international reference text on maritime law. This law applies to various certificates such as driving licenses, national identity cards, tax identification numbers for tax identification of natural and legal persons, and any other document issued by public bodies, the main purpose of which is to carry out tax audits. Birth certificate. Curiously, all these documents are in capital letters. Why is this information, for example, your name and surname, in capital letters, against grammatical usage? At the moment of your birth, the parents of any person representing the newborn register the newborn at the civil registry, and that very moment a corporation strawman legal fiction is created with a name similar to yours, but written in capital letters, in the same way as the name of ships or companies. Such a corporation is accepted by the humankind unconsciously, represents it contractually with the state, and is thus subordinated to Admiralty Law. This is what was known in ancient Roman law as capitis diminutio maxima, the loss of a person's rights. In 1933, compulsory birth registration was introduced, and today the birth certificate is applied as a security and is traded on the stock exchange like companies' shares. The value of a person corresponds to the average expected lifetime earnings of that person, taking a lifetime as the average value of a long life from his or her labor power, creative ideas, expertise, consumptions, taxes, illness, and whatever else they can think of. This system has been established throughout the world and is valid for most Western countries, with various nuances. Bills of exchange. Because the dollar, the euro, and currencies in general are no longer tied to the gold standard and are created by private central banks, they are simple bills of exchange that represent a debt, since they are only covered by the involuntary credit that people give to their state with the registration of their birth, and with the energy in the form of slave labor with which we sustain the system. In Spain, the creation of a corporation is obvious, which comes to be represented by the flesh and blood man or woman, if we stop to observe that the number assigned to the national identity card is identical to the tax identification number, which is necessary to exercise commercial activities. This number is assigned to Spaniards and foreigners resident in Spain, regardless of whether they carry out commercial or work activities, as the document is issued when they reach 14 years of age, or even earlier optionally. This whole system is designed to make it appear that everything is done in a lawful and legal way, but giving the impression that everything is for the benefit of society as a whole, when in fact it is for the benefit of a few, such as the banks, which in turn control insurance companies, hedge funds, oil companies, etc. Mastery of English. Most of these terms tend to come from English, such as the infamous collateral damage. Collateral also has the meaning of guarantee of a debt, and therefore refers to the loss of a mere commodity. The term human resources reminds us that we are considered as an asset to be managed, as part of a corporation's resources. The best known misrepresentation of language is that applied in Anglo-Saxon countries by the police, who by asking, "Do you understand?" are in fact looking for the subject to agree to enter into a contract under maritime law, when in reality they mean, "Do you stand under?" This is a language game that is learned by the agents in practice without fully knowing its connotations, as they are only partially aware of the depth of the manipulation of the system. Movements. Over the last decade, living human beings have emerged, mainly in Anglo-Saxon countries, especially Canada, who have dedicated themselves to study and understand how this system works, and how to use this knowledge to make the maritime law not to apply to them, with sometimes surprising results, claiming their divine sovereign essence. For more than a decade now, several movements related to this kind of legal and political issues have emerged using a legal document called a notarial act affidavit and sending it to the authorities, in which they declare themselves free men who do not accept to represent any legal fiction called citizen, and that they are only subject to the common law. In order to apply such procedures in reality, it has to be done with great caution, and although it is not necessary for a legal professional to do it, it is true that those who have done it do it after studying, understanding the legal procedures of the country of residence and the semantics, legal semantics, history and the etymology of the words, or where it is going to be applied, because otherwise it can lead to unexpected consequences. Recent news. Donald Trump will not attend the Queen's funeral. The funeral procession was led by a goat. What could be the significance? King Charles III is controlled by the White Hats and could fail. The Space Force has taken control of British satellites and banking servers. As everyone knows, King Charles III was busy while living in Transylvania last year. The Prince of Wales' private natural retreat is nestled among the meadows and hills of the Thalam Valley in Transylvania, Romania. The failure of the committee that runs governments and corporations is expected. Collapse is known to be happening all over the world, and the dark days ahead will be speechless with anger. Gonzalo Lira, the Chilean-born American based in Ukraine, who has drawn attention with his uncensored videos on Russia and Ukraine, described the coming winter of energy shortages and economic collapse as causing the economic annihilation of Europe, in quotes, adding that as a consequence of this coming collapse, Western Europe would be transformed into an impoverished region. The political leaders of Western nations are out of touch with reality and incompetent in their actions. Not only do they lack a real understanding of economics and warfare, but they fail to grasp the fundamental concepts of cause and effect. Import to Los Angeles, the largest port in the US, fell by 17% in August. FedEx shares plunged more than 20% before trading on fears of a surprise slowdown. CEO warns of a global recession. At least 10 banks raided in Lebanon by savers claiming the government froze their money because of the economic crisis. Protests break out in Beirut, Lebanon, as Armenians try to make their way to Azerbaijani embassy. The conflict between Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan has potentially escalated to levels beyond April 2021. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, is on his deathbed with cancer. The regime is in danger of imploding. His military forces are divided, and his regime is in chaos as various generals and political families struggle for power. The prodigal son returns. That nameless stray kitten who left my presence for lack of attention and left me feeling very sorry for him has returned today, Saturday, and has taken a load off my mind. He was a little frightened while I was feeding him, for I wept with joy. Now I will take more care of him. I have been on an emotional roller coaster this week. God is great. Thank you, God. Everything dissolves. The Immense Dissolution by Judith Castle. I was shown something last night, just before I fell asleep, that was immensely moving and demonstrated me the immense power of divine love, which is now pouring over the planet as we go through this immense process of transfiguration. They showed me all the power structures, the rigid institutions, and everything they defended since Atlantis fell. Those who ruled and were ruled, and thus the traditions, of which no one remembers where they came from, nor their original meaning and forms. More than this, how these same ones, with their rigid structures, regulated everything and thus imposed such a thing on all they conquered or subdued, including their own people. Then I was shown the new earth and the outpouring of divine love on the old earth, and this was happening. The cracks began to appear, and the cracks grew wider and wider, until everything exploded and the fragments of the old dissolved into nothingness. All this simply through the power of divine love. This went into the core of those who had the power and all the artificial structures, and the people within them were also dissolving. The masks were removed, and only the soul was left, now naked, open to the core. When the soul is stripped to the core, there are no more hidden places. The soul is now bathed in the divine light and shows itself in its truth. The power of love is sweeping the earth. Enormous and drastic changes are upon us. Nothing is stable any longer. Therefore, look beyond the apparent events and do not be moved in any way, shape, or form. For what has been divinely declared is happening, and so the old is giving way to the new. As all is transfigured, that which is not of the highest truth will be exposed. The power of love is opening up. It is bringing to the surface that which needs to be seen, heard, forgiven, and let go. It's not the time for great outward planning or pushing and showing. It is simply the time to go deep within and allow the power of love to come through you and lift us all into the highest love, the purest love, the state of unconditional love, where all is one, where the power of love unites us all in ways we cannot even imagine now. But we are being released from all duality, from all separation, from all expressions and forms of that, and therefore we can only see and experience the wholeness. The deeper knowing that everything I see, everything I experience, everything that crosses my path is part of me. What I witnessed was the transfiguration of that the power of love produces and goes beyond words. I understood the message that the dolphins brought me this weekend in a much deeper and broader sense, for it is indeed through the heart center connected to our soul that the power of love lifts us to the high states of transfiguration, renewal and rebirth, just as everything is exposed and everything collapses. The power of love brings a total rebirth, a new humankind and a new golden age on the new earth. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.